Welcome, 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 everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It is awesome to round out the end of this week with like-minded individuals who want to learn more about how to make our digital world a lot more inclusive. So a little bit about me, the voice behind the curtain. You may not see me, but I am absolutely here. I am Jillian Fortin, and I am your host for today. I am the marketing director at Diamond, who is your digital agency partner for complex technology projects that everyone can use. If you haven't already, check us out at Diamond.la, and I will also drop the link in the chat shortly. I am super excited to introduce today's speaker, Joey Fulginiti. But first and foremost, I am going to do a couple of things. First, I want to make sure everyone is paying attention, and I'm going to start off with a quick poll. So it's going to pop up shortly. Here we go. Ready, set, go. I'm curious to know, how familiar are you with accessibility? There are 4 choices. The first choice is, I'm an accessibility pro. The second choice is, I have a more practical understanding of accessibility than most, but have a lot to learn. The third choice is, I know about accessibility, but haven't the faintest idea of how to incorporate it into my role at work. The last choice is, what's accessibility? And I'm really, really glad to not see any responses for that last one. But I'm seeing the majority of us, actually 72% of us, have selected, I have a more practical understanding of accessibility than most, but have a lot to learn. So y'all, you have come to the right place, because our senior product design director, Joey Fulginiti, is going to teach you just that. And instead of me reading a bio and going through bullets, I'm going to pass the mic straight over to Joey to share his unique story firsthand. So Joey, take it away.
Thank you, Jillian. And thank you everyone for joining today. As Jillian said, my name is Joey Fulginiti. I'm the Senior Product Design Director here at Diamond. Today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my journey in the design world and my current approach in creating an all-inclusive design team. So I'll do a brief introduction. Then I want to talk about accessibility and how I started thinking about it. Then I'll go into empathy, do the research, develop a system, and create a smooth handoff. So a little bit about me: 15 years of experience leading large teams that design web, mobile, and enterprise applications. About 8 years mentoring and leading these creative teams. I was responsible for the creation of the design system process and actually the agile process for the Toyota platforms at Saatchi and Saatchi. I've consulted for fintech, entertainment, music, tech, real estate, publishing industries. I've worked at agencies that are large like Saatchi and Deloitte. I've worked at some really small boutique agencies like Moon to Mars and Black Box. Worked in-house, blah, blah, blah. I've worked for some time now. My education started at the University of North Texas, where I majored in music and minored in graphic design. Then I went to the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, studied interactive design. I went back to the Art Center to facilitate master classes on the future of design. And I've also mentored at the General Assembly. So now, as a senior design director, I don't necessarily want to manage the design anymore. What I'm into now is creating cultures of collaboration. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. This is definitely my mantra. This is the idea of we are stronger together. So what does that mean? In my world, it's breaking down silos between not only designers, but teams and companies. So in my first experience as in a design agency, I noticed that some of the designers were working in silos from the same agency. One would be on this project, one would be on another project, and they weren't collaborating with each other. They weren't sharing knowledge. They weren't showing each other the work. And to me, that seemed like a waste. It seemed like it'd be very valuable for productivity and innovation if we all came together. So when I started managing, I started breaking down the silos, and I created things like design crits and forums. So the designers from every project could get together and talk about anything they wanted. They could talk about their work. They could talk about stuff outside of work that's inspirational. And then I took it a step further, and I broke down the silos between designers and engineers. And here at Diamond, we have a great team of accessibility subject matter experts. So now I have my designers working with the accessibility SMEs. We're working with engineers. We're working with product owners. And we're all collaborating now. We're moving faster. Productivity is better. And as I said, innovation. But then I even took it a step further. And then I started asking my clients to come in to the collaboration. And some clients can do it depending on bandwidth, some can't. But the ones who do, they love it. They absolutely love collaborating with the product design teams. It builds a lot of trust with my agency and that client. It also helps that client to see what we do, so we provide them the best design possible. So everyone gets better when you're collaborating. It brings people together, it makes us stronger, and especially in this remote culture, I think it's more important now than ever. So a little bit about where I've been. I am a traditional graphic designer. I started in design. I went to logos, marketing. I started in the print world, went to digital, web, got into data, really big, wireframing, prototyping. All of these things are more or less milestones for me. But as you can see at the end, in my last year and a half here at Diamond, I've been turned on to ADA compliance and accessibility. And I definitely consider this a milestone and something that I'm very excited about learning and incorporating into my everyday practice. So my goal now is to create an internal design culture with a more inclusive mindset. So how am I doing that? Well, first I wanted to establish the role of my designers. And I wanted us to do this together. When I create a process or anything with my design team, I do that with them. Now, I have a lot of ideas, but I don't try to force any ideas that make anyone uncomfortable. So I try to get everyone together and say, okay, what about this? And so these bullets here are integral for me, for everyone to get on board with. If I can align with everyone's passions, I think I'm more successful. So in my opinion, it's our responsibility as designers to do at least this. So understand and comprehend the business goals, create the problem statement, talk to users and understand their needs, map those user needs with the business goals, evangelize for the user, advocate for the product, understand market needs and other competitors, and be aware of everyone who accesses the product. So accessibility, this is how I started thinking about it. I wasn't aware of it in my previous jobs, and I'm not sure whose fault that was. I don't want to blame the companies for not asking me, but if a company doesn't ask you to do it, you kind of won't do it. So here at Diamond, we put a great emphasis on it. So I'm learning so much about it, and by no means am I an expert at it. I'm still a product designer, but I am now trying to incorporate this newfound knowledge into my team, and these are some of the ways I've gone about doing it. So the first thing is about explaining it to myself so I can explain it to others. So I literally took about a year to draw this diagram on the right. I know it's amazing, and it seems like it took longer than that, but it's morphed 100 times, and it morphs, and it probably will morph after today. It's all about talking to people in the community and finding out how I can explain it to myself so I can sell it to my team. So the way I see it is when I started learning about accessibility, it seemed like it was almost the same best practices as usability in design. It's very similar to me. There's a lot of the same concepts apply. So I feel like it's just part of the global practice of usability. So usability to me, it's designing products that make it easier for human beings to use the web and software. Accessibility for me is designing usable products so that people with disabilities and even minor impairments can use those without friction. And then inclusion is ensuring involvement of everyone to the greatest extent possible. This is definitely a conversation slide. So I like to bring this up right away when I talk to people and clients just to get that conversation started. And design is for everyone. And as a designer, that's definitely our responsibility. So our skills. I look through job descriptions quite a bit in my job. I create them. And when I look through hundreds and hundreds of job descriptions, I never see accessibility as part of a UX designer's job description. And so in my research, I found this graphic here on the right from the Interaction Design Foundation. This was published in 2021. And as you can see on this list, there is nothing about accessibility. And I kind of want to change that. I kind of want to change that narrative. Why is it not on the list? It's a totally valuable skill for UXers. In my opinion, you should just add it. It's simple. And in my job descriptions, I just say, are you familiar with it? It doesn't have to be a must-have. A lot of designers don't have it because no one's ever asked them to do it. So I say, are you familiar with it? Do you have any experience with it? And if not, are you willing to learn? Because if you're willing to learn, I can work with that. So now let's get into a little bit of empathy, because this is all going to tie into each other. Empathy to me is really important to designers. Most designers in the UX field, I mean, UX stands for the user experience. And it's not designing experience that you think would be good for you. It's what you think would be good for the user that you're researching. So when I looked up all these definitions, the second one I found was, to me, the most powerful. This is from Merriam-Webster.com. The way they describe it is the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings and thoughts of others without having the feelings or thoughts fully communicated in an objectively explicit manner. I can't tell you how many times I haven't had the thoughts or feelings expressed in an explicit manner to me. We have to go out and find that. And as a designer, when I say it's your responsibility, if it's not on a job ticket or a business requirement, it's still something you can go out and do very, very easily. So we must understand we are not the users. We need to go out and feel and be aware of what other people are going through when they're accessing the web, right? So to take it a step further, I just want to touch upon sympathy and empathy, because sympathy is definitely not empathy. I think when I explain that, or I ask a user about empathy, or a designer, I think a lot of people get these two confused. And so I got another definition from another source, and they basically say the exact same thing. Sympathy is when you share the feelings of another, and empathy is when you understand the feelings of another. Sympathy is when you share a feeling for another person, and empathy is the ability to understand the emotions of another. So it's all about sharing and understanding. If you share a feeling, you've been there. If you understand it, you haven't been there, but you can learn about it, and you can learn about what they're going through and help them and help design a better experience for them. So empathy and UX, we've all seen this in job descriptions for the designers out there. Our job is to understand the problem and solve the problem. Again, we are not the user. We must remove personal biases when we're doing these designs. We must understand levels of competence, basically like my level of competence versus what my dad goes through, right? I have to understand that it's not just about me. How hard is it for my dad to check his stocks, right? Cultural differences and use cases as well. But we also must understand the physical now and mental constraints as well. So I'm imploring my designers to just take it upon themselves to learn that. And how do we do that? Well, one really easy way to do that is using the tech that's available to us. Designers can easily try out some of these technologies right from their own computers. So the first screenshot, that's the system preferences dialog in Mac OS. So you can go there, you can go to the accessibility tab, and you can literally just hit VoiceOver and see what it's like to access the web from VoiceOver. I don't see any designers on the call. Has anyone ever tried to do that? Is there any way, Jillian, that I could see a raise of hands if anyone's tried this? Any designers have tried this, or anyone, business owners?
Yeah,
anyone?
absolutely. If y'all have tried this before, we want to hear from you. So down below in the toolbar, there is an icon that says raise hand. And it looks like we've got some brave participants. Awesome. Joey, we've got quite a crew of folks that have done this. Would
That,
you like to invite any to the stage?
I mean, if anyone has an experience they'd like to tell us, yes, absolutely.
Drop it in the chat if you'd like to come on stage and share with the class, if you will.
Yeah, this is something that, again, I'm new to this, but as a designer, one of the things we're doing here at Diamond that's awesome is we're doing user testing with people with disabilities, and talking to them has been incredibly useful. And when we talk to them, we see like, oh, this is how one person said to us, I use voiceover for it's always on. And I'm like, wow, what's that like? And I asked my designer one day, like, have you turned it on yet? And he's like, no. I go, try it, turn it on for an hour and see what it's like. And the feedback is amazing. Again, this is something you don't have to have. You don't have to ask a client for a massive research budget. You can do this stuff on your own, and we have a lot of fun with it. We bring it to our designers forum. We talk about it. We solve for it. It's great. The other slides, the other screenshot is from Google Chrome. There's settings in Chrome. Turn them on, see what it's like. I think it's really fun. Jillian, before I go on, does anyone want to say anything?
Everyone seems to have gotten quiet.
Okay, all good, all good, all good.
But Jeannie in the chat did share, I've started incorporating alt text when I post images on Twitter.
Oh, right on. Yeah, alt text. I'm going to talk a little bit about that too. Yeah, all these things that we do as designers, they're not as hard or as unfathomable as I thought they were before I came here and learned that this is just basically part of the UX design culture anyway, right? So research, let's talk a little bit about research. So in the UX design world, these are all things we do as in UX or product design anyway, right? So a lot of, I'm just going to go over a few examples, not a lot, but I'm just going to show you like, why not just try this, right? Creating personas for people with disabilities can be invaluable for creating exclusive and accessibility products. So again, I've created a lot of personas in my day. I've never created one for a person with disabilities. So if you haven't done it, I would say do it, try it. It's fun, it's easy. You can talk to people, you can get some user testing or some surveys in, and then you can validate these. You can keep refining these personas, and then now it's a design artifact that your designers could always look at as they're designing. Valuable source, journey maps. This journey map doesn't go into anything with accessibility, but it's an old journey map that I built for a client that was trying to describe the user's journey on paying their car loan. And as you can see, as I talked to these users, they were excited at the beginning of their journey. And as soon as they had to log in and make a payment, they went from feeling nervous to frustrated to angry. And I don't even want to tell you what they were saying when they were angry, but as you can see, they came out of it and then they were upset again. And my advice to the client was just fix the pain. Just look at the red and fix those things. It's not the entire experience sometimes. It's just the part of that journey that's causing your user this great deal of pain. The companies owe it to the users, and we owe it to the companies to make sure they're aware of this. The other thing we do here at Diamond is we talk directly to the users with disabilities. So we have one-on-one Zoom calls. We do user testing. We do user interviews. This is great. This helps us understand more about the challenge they face. This also validates those personas that we just talked about. So those personas that we keep on refining them and refining them. And then we refine the journey maps as well. Again, this is like, I've done a lot of user testing in my life, but I've never done it with people with disabilities. And I just don't know why. No one ever asked me that. But now that I'm aware of it, I want to do more of it. And talk about building empathy. This is huge. And that personal interaction on a Zoom call, I really think that's a lot better than the automated user testing platforms. I looked into a lot of user testing platforms, and I'm not sure most of them have accessibility options anyway. And it might be a good thing for us because talking directly to the people has been completely eye-opening. There was a participant one day that was crying, and they said, "I can't believe you're talking to me. Thank you so much for thinking of me." And it's that, it's that kind of emotion that we're seeing that is absolutely transformative as a designer. Talk about making a difference, right? I'm also learning, like, this is also not an edge case. This is a lot of people out there. We had no idea from the design world how many people are accessing the internet and software with some kind of disability or impairment, or it could be temporary. It could be a mom holding a baby and she only has her right hand, so she's got about a year of that. There's a lot of different things that we've heard in our training and our talking to people that have really made us more compassionate as designers. So if you're a business, what can you do? You can offer training. A lot of this training is very inexpensive, very quick. A lot of this is stuff we've done here. We all have DQ University subscriptions. All my designers take it. We just went to the CSUN Assistive Technology Conference in Anaheim as a team. That was a really great bonding experience. Again, with remote work, to see the team out there and going to these conferences and seeing these speakers. We had some of the Diamond speakers there. It was great. There's a lot of other free resources. There's Udemy classes. There's the Interaction Design Foundation, that they have a short class. This is just a small list. There's a lot of things you can do to either train yourself, or if you're a design leader, get your team into training for sure. All right, so toolkits. If I don't have any other questions about the research, I'm going to go into toolkits because this is where I really jam. Any questions? I don't see anything. We good?
Well, we do have a hand up from Bert. Bert, did you have a question? Going. All right, let's put a pin in that. Okay, Bert put their hand down so we can go on.
Okay, thank you. So toolkits. So this is one of the ways that I've been trying to bake accessibility into our process so that the designers can learn and move quickly without slowing down the design process. I've always used toolkits no matter what. Ever since I've discovered them, I used to build them at companies, like smaller companies I worked at. It's a lot of work. So these days I look for ones that have all the functions we need, and then we customize them. So this is the one we have here at Diamond, Platformer 2. It's a great toolkit. It's a UX wireframe toolkit for Figma. It's amazing. So some of the things toolkits do for me is they help the designers focus on the problem. I've had designers design their own wireframes and add colors and drawings, and then in the meetings, everyone's focused on the colors and drawings, and they're like, "What? Who drew that car? That's an awesome illustration of a car. Like, how did you draw that?" And they're like, "No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this interaction." And it's a distraction. So having this one uniform toolkit, in my experience, has been a lot more productive. You also spend less time fiddling with files. This toolkit in particular allows you to create atoms, molecules, and modules, as well as page layout. So it's atomic. This creates massive consistency along the teams, and it creates much more time for design thinking. And as you edit these and you publish them, especially in Figma, it doesn't work as well in Sketch. But if you publish all of your customizations, now your whole entire team can access these. So let's show you one to give you a little bit of an example. So I brought this toolkit to the team, and I invited a accessibility SME, and I said, what are some of the biggest problems? And one of the biggest problems we found with accessibility is input fields. So we took this input field, and my designer and my accessibility expert went to town and went through all the permutations that you could have in an input field. Now, the problem that we see a lot in accessibility is that column on the right, the error states. So what they did with us is we drew out all the permutations, and we fixed all the UX problems, and we fixed all the accessibility problems. Now, this is at the component level. And my genius designer, Tim, he created one massive component for this, and all of these now are variants. So if you are familiar with Figma, you know that once we publish this component from the Figma library, all you have to do now, anytime you want to build a field, no matter how many field labels you need, you can drag that one component onto your file. You can copy it as many times, and now you just adjust the variants. And now you have a fully customizable, perfectly accessible form field. It's amazing. This is super, super scalable, as you can imagine. And in an agency like Diamond, we have multiple clients, we have multiple UX designers. They're all pulling from this toolkit. They're all building forms with great UX and great accessibility practices built in. And as I said before, if I get a new designer tomorrow and they are not that skilled at it, I know that using my toolkit, they're going to be using the best practices. They can reverse engineer it. They can learn. They can talk to the SME. They can talk to the other designers. The other designers on my team are becoming experts at it now. So it's super consistent. It speeds up your process, and it's ultra scalable. So build your UX and your accessibility best practices into the toolkits. Very powerful. My other example of the toolkit, especially in Figma, this is all Figma now because Figma has these great features. You can label components. Not only do you label the component in your page view when you're building the component, but you could also label it in the documentation section. And the reason why that's important is because every time you use this atom, this is just one element now. Every time you use the atom in a design, so let's say you're building a large enterprise application and you're using that icon 1,000 times, it will always carry that description with it. And then now when the developers come and they want to pull their designs, your designs from Figma, they use the inspect column, and the CSS and the label is in the code. So they know what to label. So this creates a very consistent handoff to developers, cuts down on time. It's a huge, huge help for us. It cuts down on some of the annotations, but we still need to annotate to be explicitly clear, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But again, as your library grows and as you edit everything in the component section, it just grows to the rest of the company, and it's completely scalable. Speeds up time, and a heart is not a heart. And this is what I mean by that. So when we use icons and we don't put text next to the icon, which is actually a usability best practice and an accessibility best practice. But as you can see here in these examples, some of these companies still don't use the text next to the icon. And if you're in a situation as a designer and you need to just use the icon, you need to let the developers know what that icon means. And as you see in these three examples on Indeed.com, the heart icon means save job. On the Zillow website, the heart icon means save home. And on the Instagram website or app, the heart icon means like post. So a heart is not always a heart. And so this, as a designer now, can describe to the developer what our intent is. If the developer gets it and just sees a heart and always thinks it means like, then they aren't really getting the context of the design. We want them to know the context. And if we are explaining the context in our annotations, in our toolkits, we speed up the flow from design to dev. And then we also clearly express our intent. And then there's one more example here. We also create this, I call it the sandbox. This sandbox, as you can see on the left here, it's just a page. And it's a sandbox. I ask all the designers from all the teams, when they have a UX problem or an accessibility problem, bring it into the sandbox and let's knock it out as a group. So we'll call one of our accessibility SMEs in, and they'll see the problem. Let's say it's a carousel, and they'll give us all this information. They'll say, well, best practice is this. Sometimes they're complex problems, and we need some time to figure them out. So we'll put them here in the sandbox, we'll figure them out. And once we nail the problem, we'll publish the problem. So our toolkit is not only just this great atomic design toolkit, it's also an area where you could go as a designer and you could see all these scenarios. You could see all I left all the notes in there. You could see the designers talking to each other, and you could see all of the learning that's happening through the team. So I highly recommend creating a sandbox for collaboration. Every design will bring their problems here. We solve them as a team. We invite the SMEs, everyone learns, and the team gets stronger.
Hey, Joey,
Yes,
it's Jillian. Quick question.
yes.
And this is not something that anyone in the audience asked, but it might be something that applies to a lot of the folks in the audience. So what if you are a designer or an engineer at an organization that doesn't have accessibility SMEs on staff yet? Because maybe they're new to their accessibility practice, or they're trying to develop proof of concept for their bosses. What would you recommend in that scenario?
Everything that I just previously mentioned, like training, is all something that a designer can go out and do. When I wanted to get into wireframing, I read a few blogs, I watched a few YouTube videos, I paid $25 for lynda.com class, and I learned how to wireframe. All this information is out there. So designers can just learn it on their own. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at, Jillian. So like, you don't need to have a SME. It's a great benefit to us. We're kind of spoiled because of that, but you definitely don't need it. You don't need it to learn the information. And these toolkits and the other pages that I'm about to show you, there's a lot of plugins in Figma and in Sketch that help you with accessibility. So I say use the tools. Use the tools that are out there. A lot of them are free. And then acquire the knowledge. The knowledge isn't hard to find. We've done it anyway. Half of us have learned how to do this somehow on YouTube, right? So I think it's all about the responsibility factor. I think once you take it upon yourself to learn it, you can find the knowledge.
I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. We have an additional question,
Sure.
and I'm going to give Lucas the chance to come on stage. If you'd like to pose your question to Joey directly, hit that raise hand button and I can pull you up. If not, all righty. Thanks, Lucas. I am about to bring you on stage in 3, 2, and 1. Lucas will be rejoining the webinar as a panelist. Welcome, Lucas.
Hi, Joey. Hi, everybody. My question was just that, thinking about elements deep early in the sprint that flow into accessibility. So, alt text is just kind of the most obvious one, but just wondering how, when you're working with clients, how early and what are the elements to get them thinking accessibility wise, so that it's not just a big rush at the end of your sprints or your end of your process, to really make sure it's intrinsic to the project?
That's an awesome question. My whole philosophy is to make sure that snowball doesn't get huge by the time it gets down to the devs. And that's why I've started, well, this presentation is showing you how we started at the wireframe process. So when we do wires, we pass those wires down to visual designers, and then the wires are accessible. Then the visual designers have a different set of things they need to think about, like color contrast and type. And then they knock it out in the visual design process. And then by the time it gets down to our developers, there's not a million problems in the designs, right? But we even take it a step further, Lucas. In our discovery, we talk about it in discovery if we think there's going to be an inherent problem coming up. Like if we see something that we're completely aware of that has accessibility problems, like modals or carousels, we kind of bring it up right away and say, okay, let's just think about that. So we don't go crazy in discovery, but we really start nailing it in wireframing. Then we get to prototyping, then we get to visual design. And then by the time, like I said, when it gets to development, it's not a big problem. I love that question because before I came here, I never thought of it as a designer's problem. I always thought of it as an engineering problem. But when I came here and I talked to the folks at the accessibility folks here, and we were studying other designs from other companies, I learned, and they would tell me, and I learned that a lot of the problems start in design. A lot of these problems are initiated in the design process. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, you're really kind of the only agency I feel like that even thinks about it. I feel like, it's just such a mess out there. Nobody thinks about this stuff. And then you realize, oh, that wacky serif font that looks like the background, of course it's useless. And now you have to go way back upstream.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm guilty of that before I came here too. And it's exactly what you just said. It's just, you got to start thinking about it, all of the things that we've done for a designer. The reason why I showed you my history, where I came from, all of that stuff I learned online. I wanted to get into wires. I wanted to get into mobile in 2007 when I saw the iPhone. I was like, I have to design that thing. How do I do it? YouTube. I learned. I just went online and learned. I didn't go back to college to learn how to design for mobile. I just picked it up. Same thing with all these things I'm giving you guys here today. I'm going to give you links at the end of this for the resources. There's so much information out there, in addition to all these cool plugins that we're using. And if you knock it out in every step of the process in a software development lifecycle, you will not have a massive, huge snowball crushing your engineers. Yeah, thank you for that question, Lucas. That's what we're talking about today for sure. The designers being aware. All right, I'm gonna keep going on, Jillian. I think we're doing pretty good on time. So I talked about wireframing and toolkits. That's at the start, and then you get into visual design, and then you hand it over to the developers, right? So in traditional software development, when I started way back like 100 years ago, I was always taught to annotate my designs. Now the annotations on the far right, you can see on the screen here, excuse me, these are interaction annotations. We've always been trained to do that. So we're just talking to the developers saying, this should go this should do this opens up in a modal, this does not go to another page, or it opens another page, but I want it to open another tab, don't leave the page. Whatever those interactions are, we typically talk to our engineers and we list it all out here in the handoff. But now adding another layer to that, we are now adding accessibility annotations. And as you can see, these boxes, and you can see the little chevrons. The chevrons are calling out the H1, H2 tags. The the lighter blue chevrons are calling out the alt text tags. And then you see now you're seeing page title tags, landmarks, reading order, labels, headings, links, buttons, states. This is all of our job. And if the designers are aware of this, they hand this down to the engineers and they're like, oh, thanks, I don't have to think about this. I've had an engineer tell me, I never knew where to draw that div or where to put it. And since the designers have the intent, they know what sections they want to separate. Now they can annotate it in a way that when we hand it over to developers, they're just flying through the code, right? We used to have, in my last agency, we used to have hour-and-a-half long meetings after the designs were approved with the engineering teams to tell them all of this. And they would be really, really long meetings that would go over and have to be repeated and repeated and repeated. The amount of meetings we had just to do this was incredible. And now we're cutting down on that, I would say at least by 50%. We still talk, we still collaborate. I always give each designer 5 hours of oversight when they're done with their work, so they can always work with devs, make sure they're all collaborating. But this handoff has been integral in our improvement between design and development. And this is one of the kits that we use, and this is free. This is, I give you the link here. This is a kit created by the folks at Indeed and a girl named Stephanie Hagedorn. This is awesome. They made these little tags into components. So you could use the kit, bring it into your system and publish it. So we publish this in our Diamond Figma account. And now all my designers can pull from this. We've also, like I said, whenever we get a free kit, we always tweak it, we edit it. Our SMEs look at it and they're like, oh, this is wrong, let's change this, or let's add this, whatever, right? Annotations for accessibility. It explains the intent of the designers, cuts down on meetings, speeds up production, and it eliminates confusion. Highly recommend using some of these kits in Figma. Again, like I should probably sell Figma because like Figma is the bomb because all of this is all cloud-based. So on a remote team, once I publish this, anyone from anywhere can use these kits. So design systems. So as I was saying, after we do wires and we hand it over to visual, now visual designers, they have another whole list of things they have to go through to make sure that these designs are accessible. So they convert the brand style guide into digital. They have to go over color contrast, font sizes and weights. They have to convert the style from the toolkit. So the toolkit's pretty much accessified, but as you add, like I said, fonts and color, they have to go through their checklist of things to do. Once they do this in Figma, this also creates code snippets. It creates CSS snippets so the developers can use the CSS for their work. And it also gives you red lines in Figma. So it gives you the padding and such. So it really helps you out, helps you move fast. And then, like I said, if you accessify this for your client, then as the company scales, you always have your accessibility built in. So those are some of the tools. I would say use them. I would say check them out. There's a lot more free tools. I put a few more on this presentation. Just a real quick, like kind of high level overview of what some of my teams look like. I know we have that advantage of having accessibility SMEs. If you can't hire a team of them and you can hire one, I would say do it and then use them as the accessibility ninja, bring them into every project team and then help them just knock out problems. You know, 15 years ago, UXers were that person. We were the new kids on the block. And when there's only one of us on a team, we'd go into this is how I started. I would go into a room with developers and I would just knock out a UX problem. And so now by having our SMEs come in, they're seeing the problems right away and they're collaborating with us and they're helping us fix those problems. But everyone on this team is aware of it and they're knowledgeable of it. My researchers, the UX, UI designers are obviously aware of it. The SMEs are aware of it. My product owners here at Diamond are amazing. They are always aware of it. And our developers, they're great at it. So by letting your whole team know about it, you will all catch that. And then by creating a culture of collaboration, you'll innovate and you'll create better productivity going forward. So if you're a business owner or a designer, what can I do? Like I said, acknowledge it and be aware of it. Start there. That's how I started. I wasn't aware of it before I came here. Now I am, and now I'm completely into it. Training. If you're a designer, go get some training. Or if you're a team leader or a company, offer training. Everyone in tech offers training. Offer some training on this field. I highly recommend it. Use the plugins. Add it to your toolkit. Add it to your design systems. Document your research. Documenting the problems we see has been great because as we get into another client, a designer will say, hey, didn't you run into that problem on that project? Yeah, look at my documentation, done. Learn and grow, enjoy the journey, and by all means, collaborate. So here's my list of resources. And if anyone has any questions, I am available for questions. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Joey. We
Sure.
do have someone on stage with a question, and I'm going to invite Vic to turn on his camera. Hello, Vic.
Oh, Vic.
Muted.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Okay, great. Hey, Joey, thanks for doing this webinar. I want to say that beforehand and sharing your experience. I had a question related to inclusiveness, which is the whole title of this thing. I think I posted it in the chat, but it's around like the difference between accessibility and inclusiveness. Like, what's your take on that? And maybe there's some best practices for getting into that sort of like inclusive design mindset, and what's your experience besides accessibility in your design and like designing for different age groups, for example, or genders, or different languages and races, and like, because inclusiveness kind of covers a lot of things, right? So just kind of wanted to ask if you have any ideas on that? And maybe from a design standpoint, also, like if there's any patterns for inclusiveness that you could speak about.
Yeah, well, like I said in that awesome drawing that I did, there are so many elements of usability that apply to accessibility and inclusion. Inclusion is something I do with a client where a client might say that I don't want to build this app for mobile, or I only want to build it for mobile. And then people that don't have access to the internet that have to use the library can't access that product, right? So one of the things I try to advocate for is complete responsiveness so that you can see it from everywhere. Web apps are a big thing now that I think is better for inclusion, because you don't need a certain application. You don't need a Mac or a PC. You don't need a certain set of processors to run an application. Web apps are awesome. The new YouTube, I think it's YouTube Music web app, it's phenomenal. It's lightweight and I can view it anywhere. So there are different things you're seeing in tech that are allowing people to access the web from anywhere, because we have to understand not everyone has a cell phone. And during the pandemic, I learned that there's a lot more people that don't even have access to the internet. I was shocked at the numbers that I heard. So how are they getting their information, right? A lot of them are going to the public libraries. So like I said, if you, like my crypto app is just an app. So no, you can't go to the library and see that. So I think it's our responsibility to bring that up to the client. Always say, but I always advocate for 3 breakpoints when we design: desktop, tablet, and mobile. 320, 768, 1440. So there's a few things you can do there, and it's the same thing as everything else, Vic. You know, just take those classes. The DQ University class talked about it too. There's a lot we can learn, and there's just so much more we can do. Yeah. Thanks for the question, man.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vic. All right, y'all, we still have 13 minutes for questions, maybe even comments or any experiences you want to share about your accessibility journey, or how your organization is embedding inclusive design practices and principles into your day-to-day. Would love to hear from y'all. Joey, I think you rendered our audience speech
Man,
and contemplative.
I should have elaborated a lot more. I didn't know I was going to get done so quick.
Well, I think that's awesome. You know, I wanted to let everybody in the audience know that we are going to be doing these types of webinars more frequently, at least every month. And so if there's anything related to our core competencies in product design, technology, or accessibility, we are all ears. We are here to serve our community. So if there's anything we can do to help you in your accessibility journey, don't hesitate to let us know what that is.
Yeah, and Jillian, I think we should also talk about that. If anyone on this webinar wants to check out the next one, this is part 1 of a 3-part series. The next one is the infrastructure of design. In toolkits, design systems, that's all part of design infrastructure. And like I said, like I'm working as a director to try to build this infrastructure so design teams can work quicker and free up more time to do more design thinking. So the next one will be much more design heavy. But if you're interested in that, especially if you're a business owner and you want your teams to move quicker, I really highly recommend building an infrastructure that allows the teams to move quick, find files, naming conventions, all that stuff. So that's the next one, and that one's really exciting as well.
Ooh, awesome. That's super interesting. Are there any homework items you recommend someone take a look at before they join the infrastructure webinar?
No homework, just bring your open mind and help me collaborate.
I love that.
Yeah.
We are going to be a lot more interactive for that one, Joey, since it's going to be a little more technical. We want to hear y'all's current state of your design systems. We want to hear what you took away from today's conversation and share with the class. And then we can build upon your progress and really work towards an infrastructure that'll really make your systems more efficient. So awesome. I don't see any more questions or hands raised. I'm going to give it 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, in that case, I'm going to just close out a little early. Y'all will get 9 minutes back, or 8 if I'm too long-winded. I have dropped a couple of links in the chat for y'all to follow us on social media and sign up for our newsletter if you haven't already. That is the best way to stay in the know of Diamond events and upcoming trainings and case studies. So please make sure that you are following on those networks. And then after this webinar ends, you will receive a little pop-up window with a 2-question survey. It'll take less than a minute. We'd love your thoughts on today's session, as well as thoughts on how future webinars can bring value to your business. So that being said, we thank you once again for joining us, and have a great rest of your week. Take care, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.